A very good morning to you, Lisa Nandy. I will ask you about your plans to clamp down on ticket touts in a moment. But first, I just want to kick off by getting your take on what's going on the markets at the moment, because the pound has fallen to its lowest level in over a year. UK borrowing costs have surged to their highest in 16 years. So how worried should we be?
Well, I don't think we should be worried. It's obviously something we take very seriously, but these are global trends that have affected many countries, most notably the United States as well as the UK. We're still on track to be the fastest growing economy, according to the OECD in Europe. And the Chancellor and the Chief Secretary of Treasury, I keep forgetting that we no longer have to use the word shadow after 14 years. The Chief Secretary of Treasury have been absolutely clear that our fiscal rules are non-negotiable. We're not going to borrow for day-to-day spending. We're going to continue with the plan for change, which is to get people off waiting lists, get them back into work, get the planning reforms that we need to build homes and get the economy growing and stabilise the economy so that we protect working people from the worst excesses that we've seen over recent years. And we're confident that we're still on track to do so.
Well, yes, but higher borrowing costs do have implications, don't they? I mean, it means that money that could have gone on public services will have to be spent on servicing higher or paying off debt. Rachel Reeves has ruled out higher tax rises and any more tax rises. The suggestion is that she's asking cabinet ministers to draft alternative plans to generate growth. Have you been approached about that?
Always. I've known the Chancellor for 15 years now, and she has been relentless in her pursuit of growth, both in opposition and in government. She and I have been working very closely together on plans around the creative industries. The creative industries like film, TV, video games are amongst our fastest growing industries in the country. Huge amounts of investment pouring in from overseas into those industries. We're creating good jobs all over the country, in Sunderland and the Welsh Valleys, as well as London and the South East, Birmingham, Dundee and elsewhere. What we're keen to do is to take the brakes off those industries. At the moment, there are chronic skills shortages. We want to make sure that when we create the Crownworks film studio in Sunderland, that we're not just creating growth for Sunderland, but we're making sure that kids growing up there can get those jobs and benefit from that for decades and decades to come. So we are always looking for new levers to pull, new ways to grow the economy, but there's one aim in mind, and that is to improve the lives and living standards of people in every part of the UK.
OK, but the suggestion is that higher borrowing costs mean that public services are going to have to find yet more savings at a time when they're under huge pressure. And I wonder what you think the implications of that might be. I mean, take education, for example. The National Education Union is now saying that it's holding an indicative balance on industrial action over an unfunded 2.8% pay rise for teachers. Are you worried about more strike action?
Well, we've got a good relationship with the workforce across the UK. Unlike the last government, we believe that they're essential partners in the national effort, not enemies. And we've been working very closely with the unions to deal with the cost of living crisis that working people face and get our public services on a much more sustainable footing. We've made a pay offer to teachers. I would just urge them, I know life has been very, very tough over recent years, but I'd urge them to think about the fact that we're in 6 months, we've taken more action than this Conservative government took in the last 14 years. We've come forward with a pay offer to improve their living standards, but more than that, when I speak to teachers across the country, including at my little boy's school, what they want is to make sure that we relieve the pressures on teachers so that they can get back to the core job of teaching, so that they can deal with the children in front of them, particularly the post-COVID generation who have so many challenges. That's exactly what Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, is doing, with a long-term plan to improve the educational standards and outcomes for children in this country. Just this week, we passed legislation that would have one core standard minimum offer for parents across the state system. And I would just say to the teaching workforce, I know it's been tough, but we need to work together in the interests of children. We're confident that we've got the right answers working together with them. And now is not the time to strike. Now is the time to move forwards.
The Tories have accused the Chancellor of being missing in action. She's gone to China at what they say is a time of market turbulence. Was that the right call, do you think?
Absolutely, it was. China is the second largest economy, and what China does has the biggest impact on people from Stockton to Sunderland, right across the UK. And it's absolutely essential that we have a relationship with them. We need to make sure that the UK economy remains competitive. We need to challenge where we must, including in the area of human rights. But we also need to make sure that we're working with China on those areas of shared interest. Only this morning, you've been reporting that 2024 was the hottest year on record. We've got to work with countries like China if we're going to tackle major issues like climate change. And the idea that the Chancellor cannot both take action to stabilise the economy in the short term, as we've been doing over the last 6 months, and get the economy on a long-term footing for growth is just nonsense. That's the failed model that the Tories bequeathed us. But we've shown in the last 6 months that we can do both, and we absolutely will do both.
But there are growing security concerns about China, something that Donald Trump's very worried about. And just a few years ago, 2021, you said we've got to be far more clear-eyed about the risks to the UK posed by Chinese investment and the Chinese government. So have you changed your view?
Not at all. In our manifesto, we set out 3 principles for our relationship with China: to collaborate where we can around issues like climate change, to compete, especially to make sure that the UK economy remains competitive, because China's economy has grown significantly in recent years. It was one of the only economies to grow during the COVID pandemic, and so has pulled further and further ahead and has become very dominant in the market, and to challenge where we must. And we do not shy away from the fact that when it comes to forced labour of the Uyghur and Xinjiang, we are taking action to ensure that our supply chains are free from forced labour and to uphold the highest standard in human rights. We believe it is perfectly possible to do all those 3 things at once, and that requires being clear-eyed about the opportunities and the challenges that the relationship with China poses. That's why it's absolutely right that the Chancellor is taking this relationship seriously and that she's gone ahead with this trip.
There's been a huge amount of discussion this week, as you will know, about calls for a national public inquiry into grooming gangs. Manchester's Mayor, Labour's Andy Burnham, said yesterday there's a case for a new limited national inquiry into child rape gangs. Harriet Harman has suggested a mini inquiry into some of the issues raised. Do you agree with them?
I don't actually. I wouldn't, of course, ever rule out any further inquiries at all. I think child abuse, having worked with children who were abused, including some of the girls in Keighley and elsewhere before I came into Parliament, child abuse by its nature is hidden. It's very secretive. The abusers try to keep it hidden, and more emerges all the time. So, of course, never rule out a further inquiry. But what I agree very much with the author of the last report, Alexis Jay. We had a 7-year national inquiry, in part because of the concerns that Andy is raising, that local inquiries don't have the same powers to compel witnesses to give evidence and to take decisive action. 7 years of inquiry, thousands of victims giving testimony. And I worked with them closely over that time. Many of them said that they didn't really feel that any inquiry would result in action. There were 20 recommendations from that inquiry, and the Conservative government didn't implement a single one. I think it'd be very hard to say to victims, we're doing another inquiry when we haven't implemented a single recommendation from the last. Over the years, we've had so many inquiries. Every single one has found the same things. Young girls are not believed because they're young, because they're female, and because they're working class. And the systems that are supposed to protect them protect themselves instead. That's what the Alexis Jay inquiry sought to change. And that's why we're cracking on this week and in coming weeks with implementing the recommendations from that inquiry. I think that has got to be the top priority.
And finally, I can't let you go without giving you a chance to tell us what your announcement is about plans to clamp down on ticket touts fleecing people when they buy tickets.
Well, you're right to say that for far too long, fans have been fleeced and ticket touts have got away with it. They're not just leeching money out of the pockets fans. They're leeching money out of the music industry, which is one of the crown jewels of British exports and brings joy to millions of people. We are determined that that is going to change. We've launched a consultation today. The consultation is about how, not if, we call time on the ticket touts. We're proposing a price cap on secondary ticket resales so that no longer can ticket touts buy up huge numbers of tickets and sell them on for hugely inflated prices. We've seen obviously the Oasis tickets in recent years, but Coldplay, Bruce Springsteen, because of these rip-off touts, people have been asked to pay over £1,000 for a ticket. I don't know a single person who could afford that. And so the message today is that time is up for ticket touts. We're asking people to get involved in the consultation, and when it closes in April, we will waste no time in cracking on with the necessary legislation to end this practice once and for all.
Lisa, Nandy, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.